Hello and welcome back to the Simplifiers podcast, where we take topics in business and in life and simplify them. And friends, I am so excited to talk about this topic today because, well, this is something that's in my wheelhouse that I always can use a little bit of help in refining. We're going to simplify how to be an excellent public speaker. And I know you're thinking in the back of your minds, well, yeah, Mary, but hello, 2020, all of the conferences I was supposed to attend got canceled. All the conferences I'm supposed to attend next year are either going online or otherwise. Like, why is this important? And I have the answer for you in just a second. My special guest actually has a compelling argument for you as to why being an excellent public speaker is a good idea. His name is Michael J. Gelb. He's a pioneering practitioner and thought leader in the fields of creative thinking, executive coaching, and innovative leadership. He's worked with clients like Nike, AT&T, Microsoft, and more. He's also the author of, 17 books, including How to Think Like Leonardo da Vinci and Mastering the Art of Public Speaking, selling more than 1 million copies worldwide. So I'd like to welcome to the Simplifiers podcast, Michael J. Gelb. Hey, Michael.
Hi, great to be with you.
I'm glad you're here. And I would love to talk into this because I feel like I could geek out on this subject with you a little bit. And I'm so thrilled that you're here. First off, why do you believe public speaking is the number one skill that you can cultivate that's going to truly supercharge your career? Is that actually true for everyone?
Well, I don't know if it's true for everyone. It might not be true if you're a mime. But I suppose even if you're a mime, you probably have to give a presentation in order to get hired as a mime.
Yep, that's right.
And the way to think about it is your technical skill in any given area. Other things being equal, in other words, you have the same degree of technical skill, someone else has the same degree of technical skill. Who is going to get the most opportunities? Yeah. Who's going to get promoted if you work in an organization? Who is going to get more clients to take advantage of their skill if you're an entrepreneur and just running your own business? The person who's better at public speaking. Yeah. So yes, it's other things being equal. It doesn't make up for the fact if you don't have the technical skill, so you have to be good at what you do. But other things being equal, public speaking then becomes the number one skill.
And, I remember reading from your book, page 3, right out from the gate, you say this: your presentation skills become more important as you become more important. And to become more important, you need excellent presentation skills. You must be able to sell your ideas to have them implemented. And communicating your ideas effectively helps you develop and refine your ideas. The process of preparing a simple, powerful expression of complex ideas compels you to clarify your thoughts. You do not know what you're talking about unless you're able to articulate your message so that others can understand it. So it's the key to leadership and long-term success, as you say. Why is that?
Well, the why is simple. It's because of taking something complex and making it accessible for people.
Yeah.
And that is an intellectual exercise. So, and there are two ways that really happens. One is by writing. You may think you know something, but write a book about it or an essay or even a blog post. And then when we read it, we can see, is it clear? Is it simple? What's the point or points?
Yeah.
Same thing when you present. It's actually easier to obfuscate when you speak. If you have charisma, if you are funny, if you are witty or clever in some way, you may be able to distract people from the fact that you don't really have anything of substance to say.
Oh, goodness.
Just why when people come to me and they say, I want to be a public speaker, I say, well, what do you have to speak about?
Yeah.
First have a message. First have something that you've studied, that you are passionate about, that you know about. Then explore writing about it and speaking about it. Here's interesting point, however, is that even though you can get away with more when you speak, What you can't get away with is delegating your speech to someone else. As you become more senior, as you become more important in an organization, you can delegate people to write your speech for you, to send out the message to your staff or your team or associates. But you can't delegate somebody to stand up and give the address to the whole organization. That has to be you. So it's important as you become more important to get better at this.
Yeah. And, a side note, I look at public speaking is not just going and delivering a keynote talk on stage, right? It is doing a pitch presentation for a prospective client. It is motivating a team at a quarterly retreat. There's so much to public speaking beyond just the, delivering a talk on stage, right?
Very much so. And all the same principles, of course, apply when we're in Skype or Zoom or Webinar Jam or whatever platform you're in. The same fundamental principles that are in the book apply in virtual modalities, and they actually become even more important.
And I definitely want to dive into that because, how many Zoom calls have we all attended in the last 12 months for sure? And spoiler alert, I have a feeling a few more are coming in the new year ahead. Well, so, okay. 74% of people in America have an absolute fear of public speaking. So 3 out of the 4 people potentially listening to this episode right now in the States are going, I don't know if this is for me. What would you tell that person who is really faced with the fear of public speaking?
Well, I'd comfort them by letting them know that they're in the majority.
Right.
Right? 74% of people report fear of public speaking. I'd also let them know that many of the finest communicators, both professional public speakers, as well as actors and other performers, started out with a fear of public speaking, stage fright, and so on.
Yeah.
And that one of the greatest things to do in life is to find that which you are afraid of. And instead of running away or avoiding speaking or whatever it happens to be, learn to do it.
Yeah.
Learn to do it. And we guide you. I'm not kidding that we're going to transform your fear and supercharge your career. That's the subtitle of the book.
Yeah.
Because I've had the experience over many decades of helping people who were terrified become sometimes remarkably good at this. The benefit of that is it's not just that it's the number one skill and it becomes more important as you become more important. But when you learn the thing you think you're not good at, you start to realize you can learn anything you want, and your sense of confidence goes up dramatically. And as your confidence rises, you're perceived differently by others. You develop, that's what people want in leadership.
Yeah.
They want confidence. And confidence doesn't mean you know it all or have all the answers. It just means you have experience facing things that made you uncomfortable and you found your way through them. And the more you do that, the more you realize, for me, it started with learning how to juggle. It just seemed impossible. And I just said, I'm going to learn it. And I got really good at it. And then when I was in school, I was told, my teacher, I couldn't draw. We were asked to draw airplanes. And the teacher actually hung mine up on the wall as an example of what an airplane doesn't look like.
Oh, gosh.
And it was humiliating.
Yeah.
It was not some evolved lesson. It was just, I've learned so much from all my terrible teachers over the years. I was thrown into the deep end of a swimming pool when I was by a camp counselor who had, in a misguided attempt to help me overcome my terror of deep water. I had a fear of singing. I thought I could never sing because I had a similarly embarrassing experience when I was young. So in my 20s, I purposely went and I learned all these things. And I swam over a mile. I sang at a recital with professional singers. And I'm married to a world-class opera singer. And part of how I won her over was I sang to her early when we were dating. And she was just so moved because she's an opera singer. Nobody wants to sing for her because they're too intimidated.
Right.
I also cook for my friends who are chefs. They
Yeah.
love it.
Well, and
Right?
I mean,
So,
think about the first time you ever rode a bike. I mean, you probably weren't so great at that, but there is a series of repetition that builds that confidence over time. It's practicing a new discipline is like building a new muscle. I don't think I'd be very good, Michael, at riding a pogo stick right this second because I've never really done it. So I think that it's fair to give yourself a little bit of grace. If this is something that you haven't done very often, or you've never read a book about it or even practice with any intention, you're not going to be an expert out the gate unless there is some just innate talent of charisma, charm, uniqueness that is in you. Yeah, I think it takes time and practice, right?
very much so. And also, you can make that practice and that time much more enjoyable when you give up the idea that you have to get it right away.
Yes.
So you don't learn to ride a bike without falling off. You don't learn to juggle without dropping the balls. You don't learn a new language without mispronouncing a lot of words. You don't learn to play the piano without playing a lot of incorrect notes.
Yeah.
So when you change your mindset from the beginning, instead of thinking, oh, I have to get this perfect, then you make yourself miserable. Instead, you create a safe environment. That's what we do when I train public speakers.
Yeah.
We put people in an environment where we're all here to learn. We're all going to get feedback on how we can improve. And in a way, the more mistakes you make, the faster you can learn.
Yeah.
So Carol Dweck has written about this. She calls it the growth mindset versus the fixed mindset. And one of the secrets of mastering the art of public speaking is shifting from a fixed mindset, like I have to be good at this right away, or it's a disaster,
Right.
to, oh, every time I present, I can get better at this.
Yeah.
And even every time I watch someone else give a presentation, I'm getting better at this. And then incrementally, in little bits, every time, you're getting better and better and better. Before you know it, you might even get paid to speak.
It's true. And, I think I equate that to approaching it with just a playful mindset as well. Like anything that you approach with a bit of play becomes a bit more fun, less so intense and serious and structure and all the things. And so, yeah, I'd like to kind of break that down and really talk about the how next. So in your book, and by the way, the book is excellent. I highly recommend it. If you guys want to check it out, you can find a link to it in the show notes at thesimplifierspodcast.com. Any resources we talk about in today's episode can be found there in the show notes. And, what I really appreciate about your approach is the framework you use, using mind mapping and really talking about the role your nervous system plays in all things. So let's start there. How do you set the stage before you even go to speak? And what role does your nervous system actually play in it all?
Well, it plays a huge role. And when it comes to harmonizing, stabilizing, and balance our nervous system, we all need all the help we can get.
Yeah.
And I've been studying how to do that over 40 years.
Yeah.
And there's a whole range of different approaches. But the simplest one is to know why you're speaking. Why am I doing this? What is the purpose of this? And when people have a fear of public speaking and they find themselves where they're invited to speak and they can't get out of it,
Yeah.
they start to dread it. They go into fight, flight.
Yeah.
They are in a fear state, and they set themselves up for a less than successful experience. Because what they're thinking about, unconsciously, they've set an objective that says, oh my God, the reason I'm doing this is to get it over with and minimize embarrassment.
Yeah. Make it as least painful as possible.
And that's not a formula for excellence.
No.
So we get folks to learn a very simple secret. It's one of the secrets. It's shift the focus onto the audience and set objectives for every presentation based on what you want the audience to know, how you want them to feel, and what you want them to do as a result of the presentation. And I have people actually write that down. And the first, when you say, what do you want them to know? It's KISS, keep it simple, speaker. So don't try to cover 75 points in an oral presentation. One key point. What's the main message you want people to get at the end of your presentation? Keep it really simple and clear. How do you want them to feel? Because the emotional element will help. If you say, I want them to feel enthusiastic about whatever it is I do in my endeavor, then you share that enthusiasm with them because you've consciously chosen it.
Yeah.
And emotions are contagious for better or for worse. So here you're choosing what you want to catch and spread. And then, most importantly, what do you want them to do? You give a presentation for a purpose. It's to get people to enroll in something or purchase something or stop doing something or sign a petition. So what's the purpose? What's the outcome? What's the behavior you're aiming to change?
Yeah.
And when you say, okay, here's what I want my audience to know, here's how I want them to feel, here's what I'm to do, and you write that down, whoosh, that gets the butterflies to fly in formation. It organizes your nervous system, and you show up and project entirely different presence that the audience likes, because the audience wants to know, what are the benefits for me?
Yeah.
What will I learn?
Yeah. Why am I tuning in? And I think also this is really critically important now that more conferences are going into an online or hybrid modality. When you used to go to live conferences, it's a lot harder to sneak out of a room of a speaker that you're like, I'm not really into this. Nowadays, it's a click and a button. It's poof. People can disappear from one Zoom call and one room to another fairly easily. So to capture someone's attention, to captivate them, I think it takes a certain skill. And I think you're absolutely right. It breaks down into these very simple but very profound points. What is it I'm trying to say? Why am I trying to say it? How do I want people to feel? And what do I want them to do next? Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. So I also imagine, and reading through your book as you talk about the nervous system quite a bit, the energy you bring to the stage, whether it's on a Zoom call or on an actual physical stage, it emanates in the room, right? So if you're nervous, if you're, your body language is sort of hunched over or in a way, it ripples out. So exactly to your point, I think that's a critical part of setting the stage, right?
Well, that's true. And I have some more good news for people who feel nervous, because if you know why you're there,
yeah,
and what you want the audience to get out of your presentation, even if you still feel very nervous, so you can do all the other things that I recommend in the book, and you probably won't. You'll probably transform it, and you'll probably feel great. But let's say you're just nervous anyway. You're still going to be fine if you have a purpose for being there, and if you've defined it, if you follow the other guidelines in terms of setting the stage appropriately, which we teach you how to do, if you follow the guidelines for remembering what you're going to say and organizing the presentation according to the principles that determine how people remember information, which there's a whole chapter in the book on that. Let's say you're up there and you're doing everything I just said and your hands are still shaking. The audience won't even notice it. Everybody knows that you can be a little nervous. So even if they do notice it, if you're focused on them, they're going to be empathic and compassionate for you.
Right.
They're going to like you. When people like you, they want to be influenced by you.
Right.
They like you based on the fact that you come out there and you focused on bringing something of value to them. It doesn't hurt if you can manage a smile. If you say, here's really wildly esoteric technique for when you start any presentation. It could be for, I've spoken, the biggest live group I've spoken to is 9,000 people. And I got out there and I said, I think it was the afternoon. I said, hey, good afternoon. How's everybody doing? Great to be with you. And they went, good. How are you? All right. So say hello.
Yeah. Imagine that.
People. What a concept.
Yeah.
And there are other slightly more sophisticated things you can do. Like say something that relates to something that they care about.
Yeah.
Connect with them. Find some way to connect with them, just like you connect with a friend who you hadn't seen for a while. Just something that's topical. So you're tuned into the audience. But even if you don't do that, even if you have a slightly awkward start and you're nervous, if you've got a point, if you put time and energy into thinking why you're doing this, the audience is going to give you the benefit of the doubt. The exception is if you're a stand-up comedian.
Yes.
Right? Or if you actually are a professional speaker. I get paid to actually speak to these big groups.
Yeah.
So people are not always thrilled that I'm there because frequently their boss sent them to my talk and they'd rather be doing something else. So most of my career, I've been addressing big groups of people who start out like this.
Hunched over, arms crossed.
Right. So, and within a few minutes, I've got them laughing and engaged and involved. And then obviously, if they didn't like it, I wouldn't have gotten consistently paid to do it for decade after decade. So what I've done is to try to take all of that experience and simplify it and make it accessible to the person who isn't doing this for money, but just necessarily, not directly, although everything I teach will help you if you want to actually be a professional speaker. But I encourage everybody to think of speaking as part of your profession anyway. So use the methodologies that a professional speaker uses. That's what mastering the art of public speaking is all about.
I absolutely agree. And I'd like to take this time to move into the how. Let's specifically break this down in the formats and framework that you use to actually deliver a great talk. So I know through your book that you use mind mapping as a way to structure your message. Tell me more about how that works and define mind mapping at first for anyone who doesn't quite understand what that means.
Sure. Well, mind mapping is a methodology for generating, organizing, and remembering ideas that uses creative doodling and keywords so that you can take a lot of complex information, simplify it, actually organize it better, while expressing yourself more creatively, having more fun, and because it has imagery and color and keywords, it's much easier to remember. So if you make your notes for your speech in a mind map instead of on a outline or bullet points or trying to read off your own flip chart or PowerPoint.
Yeah.
The great thing is mind mapping is so helpful both in the creative side but also in remembering your message that people make their mind map for their presentation. They don't even need to refer to it because it's a great way to memorize what you're talking about as well as to generate it and organize it. So you see behind me my bookshelf, but in the center there are the 17 books that I've written thus far, all written with mind maps.
Yeah.
So each one of those started as a mind map. And in the beginning, we tell you, go for quantity of ideas. Generate first, then organize it. So each one of these books started out as a giant mind map that looked totally chaotic and all over the place. But then I stepped back and I looked at it and I said, okay, what are the most important points here? And I circled them. In the olden days, I would have this on a wall. The first time I really did this was in my flat in London when I was working on my master's thesis, and I pasted up flip chart paper all over the wall, and I made a giant mind map about my topic. And it was a huge, chaotic mess, except that when I stepped back and looked at it, I said, oh, here are the most important ideas, and I highlighted them with a yellow highlighter. And then I thought, what order should they go in? And it organized itself.
Yeah.
All right.
So then do you put your topic, so if you know I want to speak on this topic, you put that in the center of the mind map, and then what are the major branches off of that?
Well, give me a topic. Let's say we want to do a talk on...
Let's talk on simplifying how to navigate change.
Okay, so we start with the first thing that comes up for me is I might have a sail for me to represent the idea of navigation, and I might put the word change in the center.
Yep.
That's the first image that arose to me. It doesn't really matter. I just want to get started. I don't have to, and a sail is basically a triangle.
Yep.
Put a couple waves, change.
Yeah.
Okay, so anybody can draw that. You don't have to be an artist. But what that does is it stimulates the imaginative pictorial part of my mind. Plus, I put it in the center of a page instead of at the top, because now my mind is free to go in any direction.
Yeah.
So then, the first branch I think of when I think of navigating change is I'm thinking about types of change. So I put a branch that says types, and then I put political, economic, social, just for starters. So there, I'm branching off from types, and I have 3 branches. Then I might say, gee, the economic for the business or the framework in which I'm speaking about navigating change. Let's say I'm a financial advisor, or I was actually talking to my accountant earlier today. Let's say this is my accountant, because he's talking about, we actually had to talk about what's going to happen in the U.S. with the new administration and whether the Republicans keep control of Senate. So he's basically, in his mind, he's doing this naturally.
Right, right.
So what mind mapping does is let you take what you naturally do when you start thinking about something, but it gives you a format for putting it on paper that makes it easier to follow, easier to get started, easier to continue. And what happens is it starts to, you might say, wow, that, the finance and economy is so important. I'm going to start my map over, and I'm going to make economic change the center of my new map, and I'm going to then go off from there.
Yeah.
Now, when does this stop? When you have what you need for your next presentation, which happens much faster when you do this, because you're generating way more ideas. Plus, here's the other thing that happens. You start doing this, and you wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, and you'll get, oh, I got it. And your whole presentation will come together, because what you learn how to do is incubate your ideas. Mind mapping inspires you. It gets your whole brain engaged and inspires you to then incubate your ideas. And everybody knows we get our best ideas resting in bed, in the shower, walking in nature.
Yeah.
Not in the office.
Well, yeah. And I also imagine, because I do a lot of mind mapping myself, but I've never really used it for public speaking. So I'm really inspired to use this tool here. Is that when you write it out in a Word doc, let's say, you've got maybe pages of notes and things. But when it's on a mind map, you see the big picture. You can zoom out and see the bits and pieces. And you go, oh, well, that part really speaks to this part over here. And you can connect the dots faster, right?
Much faster. I mean, this is, here's my mind map of my to-do for yesterday.
Yeah.
See, I'm working on a video program about thinking like Da Vinci. So there's my little image of the video. I'm working on an ebook. There's my tiny little E. I have projects here, and I have little squares, and I check them off when they're done.
Yeah.
Here's my little branch for health. So I have Da Vinci's Vitruvian Man. Here's my branch for my finances. I have a dollar sign. So, you don't have to be Leonardo da Vinci to do this, but then you're engaging the imaginative, free-flowing part of your mind.
Absolutely.
But you see, I also have printed keywords. That requires the analytical, focused, detail-oriented part of the mind. So when we talk about the phrase whole brain thinking has become a kind of cliche because people don't really know what it means. This is what it means. This is how you actually do it. So use your whole brain to generate your presentation.
Brilliant. And so if you're inspired by this, I would highly recommend press pause on your podcast player right now and give it a go. Grab a big piece of paper, write a topic in the center of it, give yourself, a 7-minute timer and see what flows out. Close all the tabs on your computer, shut off your phone for a second and give it a go. And then come back to us. So there also is another thing that you talk quite a bit about in the book called the Alexander technique. Will you lead us through that and just to help us understand how you use that to become an excellent public speaker?
Sure. Well, the Alexander technique, named after Frederick Matthias Alexander, who was a Shakespearean actor from Tasmania. And he developed a problem. He would lose his voice in the middle of performances. And obviously, that's a problem if you are giving one-man shows. That was his main way of earning his living. Yeah. And he loved it. He loved Shakespeare. He loved performing. But he had this persistent problem, and it got worse in his biggest performances. So he went to doctors, voice trainers, acting coaches, followed everything they recommended, and nothing helped. And most people would have given up, but he really loved acting, and he really was passionate about solving this problem. So he said to himself, he said, there must be something I am doing that's causing this problem. He said, but how to find out? Because the doctors and the coaches haven't been able to tell me what it is. They didn't have video in those days, so he set up mirrors, a big mirror in front and mirrors on the side. And then he watched himself in the mirrors as he spoke. And he noticed something. He noticed that as soon as he started to speak, there was a tendency to throw his head back in space, to raise his chest a little bit, and to interfere with his breathing. And there was a corresponding pattern of tension in his whole body. And he saw that when he did the most difficult passages from Shakespeare, this got worse. But then as he observed it more, he noticed that as soon as he even thought about speaking or reciting Shakespeare, the pattern started to take hold of him. So he said, well, my habitual pattern is associated with my head going back relative to my neck, holding my breath, shortening my spine, and tensing my whole body. He said, so the solution is probably to do the opposite of that. So the opposite of your head going back and down is to have your head go forward and up. The opposite of stiffening your neck is to free your neck. The opposite of tightening your spine is to lengthen your spine. The opposite of narrowing your torso is to widen your torso. So he came up with a mantra that he repeated to himself. Let the neck be free so the head may go forward and up and the whole back can lengthen and widen. So he would practice rehearsing this he called it the new directions for the use of the self. But then he'd find that even after careful practice of this, when it came to what he called the critical moment, his old habit was so powerful that it seized him anyway. So then he realized that he had to go into that moment. And in that moment, he had to outwit his habits by thinking that he might do something else. So instead of speaking Shakespeare, I might toss a ball. I might wave. I might touch my nose. So he left himself, he said, I will contemplate the possibility of doing something other than speaking, so that habit doesn't seize my body, mind so powerfully. He says, but whatever I do, I will do it and reaffirm letting my neck be free, head forward and up, back to lengthen and widen. Well, it worked. And what happened was his poise and presence on the stage went to an entirely new level of power. People began to notice.
Well, and I imagined once you put awareness towards those things, not in a hypercritical way, but you start to focus on the parts that are clinching up, then it does soften a bit. The awareness moves from unconscious behavior to conscious and hopefully eventually to superconscious, as they say in quantum physics. But yeah, I can imagine just that simple mantra helps you reset and click back into a new center, right?
Well, beyond just the mantra and his outwitting of the habits, which are the two critical elements that people learn as they learn to apply the Alexander technique.
Right.
The other genius thing he came up with is, so when people saw how good he became, they started to come to him and said, you got to teach me. And among those who came to him were a group of physicians who had an amateur theatrical company. They started to say, wow, this is not only great for stage presence, this could help a lot of our patients with chronic back pain and breathing difficulties, which it did. So those physicians helped to sponsor Alexander to go from Australia to London in 1904, where he became known as the protector of the London theater. And he went on to train many teachers. I studied with a number of the people who trained directly with Alexander. I trained for 3 years as an Alexander technique teacher many years ago. And that's been my super insider trade secret of being able to go on stage and be a professional public speaker and sustain my career for over 40 years, never lost my voice, haven't shown up and delivered what I was supposed to deliver. Even after I flew from London to Johannesburg, got off the plane at 10 o'clock, was taken to a place where I gave a keynote to 800 people, had lunch with the client, got on a plane, flew whatever was 14 hours back to London to meet another plane to fly 4 hours to Athens to give another keynote speech. Alexander technique is the inner secret that has allowed me to do all this and actually enjoy it and be at my best on stage. And just to say that the other genius thing Alexander did was beyond just coaching people to have this awareness and this mantra and so on, as he was working with these doctors and then with people in the theater, first he tried to just tell them this, but then he developed a way to demonstrate this by guiding people's movement. And right now, around the world, Alexander technique teachers have gotten really good at just coaching people to apply this without the hands-on work. But as soon as everybody's free to move around again, go get an Alexander lesson. Because what happens is the teacher puts their hands on you and all of a sudden, it's a very subtle, very light touch, and it's not like anything else. All of a sudden, you're taller, you're lighter, you're freer, you're happier, and you have no idea how it happened. It's the coolest thing. So, the first time I had an Alexander technique lesson, I just floated out of it. I couldn't believe it. I said, this is so cool. I remember thinking, I want to have an Alexander technique teacher with me all the time, but I couldn't afford that. That's why I became one.
Yeah, well, and I really appreciate that you kind of led us through the steps of it, and go back and re-listen to that segment too, to really, try it on your own and see it. So now we are here, the end of 2020. Crazy, hellacious year for some, I dare say most.
Right.
And a lot of us are moving our talks, our webinars, our conferences online in the new year. Now, in-person events are going to come back eventually. They always do. But can you apply some of the things that you relay in your book to those that are listening that want to translate it to virtual meetings and events? Like, what challenges do we need to overcome as a public speaker?
Yes. Well, the first things are exactly the same as a live presentation. Set your stage.
Yeah.
So before we started speaking, we took significant time to check our video, our audio, our alignment.
Yeah.
When I've always had a pretty good background for my online presentation, but we've upgraded it. We got the best camera that we could afford.
Yeah.
We've paid a lot of attention to the lighting to make it as good as it can possibly be, because I'm doing my whole business right here.
Yeah.
So I gave a keynote in India last week from right here, and a couple of weeks ago I did one in Vienna from right here.
Yeah.
So I've set the stage, and I'll tell you another one. Everything we talked about regarding poise and presence, it makes a big difference in this medium. I have a CEO that I'm coaching, and he's in a tough spot because he's caught between the founder, executive chairman of, this is a startup, the top investor, the team of people that he manages, and members of the strategic advisory board. And that people in that role, they're having to balance the needs of the team with the investors, with the founder and startups. It's all. So we were having a number of these meetings with the strategic advisory board, of which I am the co-chairman, as well as the coach of the CEO.
Yeah.
And what I noticed is in meetings, his posture would be a little bit like this, and that he would frequently do this.
Slump down, grab the face.
Touch his face. Look, if you go like that once or twice, it's no big deal. But if you're doing it, and one of my favorite chapters in the book is called Words Matter. And I coach people, whether you're a professional public speaker or just a human being who wants to be perceived as intelligent, is to delete, minimize cliches. So this particular gentleman says over and over again, candidly. He starts, his habit was to say, well, candidly and candidly and candidly. Now, if you say that once or twice, okay. If you say it 7, 8, 9, 10 times in a 1-hour meeting, on some level, the audience is thinking, is this a departure from your normal practice of obfuscation and lying?
Yeah.
Are you normally not candid? Don't say at the end of the day unless you're referring to dusk.
Yeah, think about the times that you say, well, let me just be honest here for a sec. Are you not being honest with me all the other times? I absolutely hear it. Yeah, your words are very powerful and they ripple out.
So what I had him do, because we had a particularly important meeting where there's going to be a lot of tension, it's a crucible. And I wanted to show up and get the confidence of the executive chair of the whole strategic advisory board of the biggest investor. The team wasn't on the call. This is just. So I coached him before, and I said, let's just practice sitting upright. Let the neck be free. Let your head go forward and up. Let your back lengthen and widen. Expand and tune in to the other people on this call. Tune into their energy from this place of alignment.
Yeah.
And inhibit your tendency to use the C word or any other cliche. Not that it's a sin, it's just if you pause and catch yourself about to say a pre-digested, mindless phrase, you then have the option to actually think, what do I really want to say? So you're engaging your own process of thought.
And I imagine those are,
respond to that.
yeah, those are crutches, right? That we're using. You can imagine, as you just heard me say right there, an or an is your brain trying to catch up with you in saying the right words for the next step. Don't be afraid of a pause, not a awkwardly long pause all the time, but don't be afraid of a pause to give yourself a bit more stage presence, a bit more, command a voice. I think that there is crutches that we all use, and just, be aware of those and what your trigger word might be. His was candidly, yours might be brilliant or something else.
And be compassionate to yourself. You may say, I do public speaking seminars and people will say, and 17 times in a 5-minute presentation. However, what's fascinating, when we coach them to be clearer about what their message is, to know what they want the audience to feel and what they want the audience to do, when we help them discover a story that they can tell to illuminate their point, and when we coach them to do some warm-ups before they speak, just like actors do, and when we coach them to let the neck be free, head forward and up, back length and wide, and have a little smile, and smile in your eyes, the amount of ums, ahs, you knows, and candidly goes down considerably.
So true. So if you're curious about this, I would recommend putting this book in your wish list for the holidays. Maybe pick it up for yourself as a gift. The book is called Mastering the Art of Public Speaking, 8 Secrets to Transform Fear and Supercharge Your Career. It's in bookstores wherever you shop, either online or in person. And again, you can find all the notes and links in our show notes at thesimplifierspodcast.com. But you can also connect with Michael directly at Michael Gelb, GELB.com. Is there any social media handles that you hang out at or places where people connect with you there, or just primarily through the website?
I prefer people to come to our website because it has more information. There are videos for free. There are articles for free. There are podcasts for free. Perfect. You can also sign up for our free mailing list where we let you know when we're doing the next online public speaking seminar. And we offer all sorts of other programs based on, there's a program that goes with each of the 17 books.
Yes. Well, great. Well, make sure to check those out and link up online with him and his team. So, Michael, I have a few questions as I wrap up that I like to ask every guest that comes on. And again, thank you so much for your time today. My first question is this. Tell me, what's one book or blog that you're reading these days that's either inspiring you or poking holes and challenging your belief system?
Here it is. It's called Who Am I? By Sri Ramana Maharshi. And it's a tiny little book with the highest level wisdom. So I thought this is actually perfect for simplifiers because you can read this many books about spirituality and the meaning and purpose of life, or just this one little one, which I read over and over and over again. So that's my book club selection for today.
Brilliant. We'll link that up in the show notes for people. So tell me, who's one person in your network, somebody that you know personally, you just feel is up to brilliant things? We could shine a spotlight on them, and who knows, maybe one day we'll have them on the podcast.
There's lots, which is the good news.
Yes.
But the one I will nominate is my friend and associate, Dr. Eva Celeb. That's Selhub. She's the author of 4 books. She's a former instructor at Harvard Medical School. She's a board certified physician. She's an expert in stress and resilience. She's also the lead trainer of the people that I've qualified to teach my Think Like Da Vinci material. She's utterly brilliant. I think if you look her up, Dr. Eva Celeb, S-E-L-H-U-B, I think it's drceleb.com or evaceleb.com, but she's a phenomenal resource. Sign up for her free newsletter. Follow her on Facebook and Twitter.
Yeah.
She's brilliant, brilliant, brilliant on so many levels. And today is her birthday.
Brilliant. Oh, that's so great. Well, yes, we will definitely link up Dr. Eva in the show notes as well. So I believe gratitude and simplicity go hand in hand. Tell me, what's one thing you're grateful for today?
Well, it's kind of a corny answer, but because I do a gratitude meditation every morning when I wake up.
Yeah.
And part of the meditation, the first step is right now bring to mind and heart something you feel most truly grateful for. And that's my wife, who's working in the next room, was the other person I thought of recommending because she's up to amazing things too. But it's good to feel that way under any circumstances. But when you're in quarantine lockdown with somebody 24/7 for 7 months, and you love them more than ever, like, I'm not kidding. As soon as this podcast is over, I'm going to go over there and just, honey, how are you? I missed you. So, I mean, it's an amazing, amazing blessing, greatest blessing in my life. So that's just by far the number one answer.
It's a perfect answer. A true testament. If you love the person that you've been stuck with for the last 7+ months, more now than you did prior, you're on a good track. I think you should stick with her. So again, his website is michaelgelb.com. My final question for you today, Michael, is this. Someone somewhere is hearing this episode right this second, and she's super inspired. She is looking at her strategic plans for the year ahead and wanting to really cultivate this skill, this muscle, this discipline of public speaking. What's one thing you could whisper into her ear right now just to encourage her in this moment?
It would be join Toastmasters or any other group and practice.
Yeah.
Practice in a safe environment. That's how you get really great at anything. Practice, learn to juggle, drop the balls, learn to sing, miss the notes, but don't do it on stage at a high pressure situation. Create a safe environment. So Toastmasters is global. They're wonderful, safe environment, or there are many equivalent, or form your own club. Just get together with other people and practice. And what's great is at the back of the book, we give people I call it the high performance learning feedback protocol. And it's what I've set up for my seminars to give non-judgmental, really supportive feedback. So it's how to create this, how to speak the feedback so it's easy for people to overcome their egotism and their fear of making mistakes and feel it as supportive, and then create that positive feedback loop, not just for your public speaking, but for everything in your life.
Yeah. Great advice. Just do the thing. Go out and do it. Michael, thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you.